by Keith.
Today we are reading from John chapter 18, verse 1 to 14. When he had finished praying, Jesus left his disciples and crossed the Kidron Valley. On the other side there was a garden, and he and his disciples went into it. Now Judas, who had betrayed him, knew the place, because Jesus had often met there with his disciples. So Judas came to the garden, guiding a detachment of soldiers and some officials from the chief priests and the Pharisees. They were carrying torches, lanterns, and weapons. Jesus, knowing what was going to happen to him, went out and asked them, "Who is it that you want?" "Jesus of Nazareth," they replied. "I am he," Jesus said. And Judas the traitor was standing there with them. When Jesus said, "I am he," they drew back and fell to the ground. Again he asked them, "Who is it that you want?" "Jesus of Nazareth," they said again. Jesus answered, "I told you that I am he. If you are looking for me, then let these men go." This happened so that the words he had spoken would be fulfilled. "I have not lost one of those that you gave me." Then Simon Peter, who had a sword, drew it and struck the high priest's servant, cutting off his ear. The servant's name was Malchus. Jesus commanded Peter, "Put your sword away. Shall I not drink the cup the Father has given me?" Then the detachment of soldiers with its commander and the Jewish officials arrested Jesus. They bound him and brought him first to Annas, who was the father-in-law of Caiaphas, the high priest that year. Caiaphas was the one who would advise the Jewish leaders that it would be good if one man died for the people.
Well, good morning, everyone. Let me add my welcome as well to you. If you're here today visiting or if you're regular, great that we can start this new series together. And I want to start with a common question that we often ask each other, which is, how's your week been? Now, it's a bit of a conversation starter. Perhaps you've even been asked that on the way in today. And normally, when you ask that, you kind of answer in a bit of a vague and general way, but, "Oh yeah, my week's been pretty good, busy as usual," that sort of thing. And that's because often the person asking you doesn't actually want you to give, a blow-by-blow description of your whole week, do they? No, it's just a conversation starter. But it's not a bad exercise to actually think back through the week that's just gone, and reflect on how it's been. Has it been a fantastic week, full of fun and laughter, full of joy? Has it been a productive week? You've kicked goals left, right and centre. Has it been a stressful week? Actually, there's just too much going on. I'm having these issues. Has it been a tough and disappointing week? You've actually taken some hits this week. Or has it just been a meh week? Same old, same old. You're just going through the motions. How's your week been? Have you been flying or floundering or just dead flat? No doubt this week's got some sort of combination of all the above for us, haven't they? All the ups and downs. We've had struggles and disappointments, and we've had lovely moments as well. Now, for me, last week was definitely that sort of mixed bag. Last Sunday, I had the privilege of baptising Jing and Jessie. That was a fantastic day, full of joy. But the rest of the week's been a bit of a come down from that, to be honest. There's been a couple of nice social things I've attended, but I've also faced some personal frustrations and some stress. Had a couple of bits of news that were actually tough to process. There's been one particular issue that's dominated my headspace. The week has been busy. On Melbourne, on Monday I had to go to Melbourne and back for a denominational meeting, and since then I felt like I've chased my tail all week. Juggling being a husband, a dad, a pastor, a son and a friend. Now, this is not woe is me. I know that you've all had your own stuff to juggle this week, your own issues to deal with, your own responsibilities, your own joys and your own stresses. However, one of the things that's actually shaped the last week for me is the passage we just read from John 18. I've had the privilege of actually soaking in this part of the Bible all week. And it's been especially helpful because in it there are three big truths about Jesus that have been a balm for my soul. They've been truths that have helped me keep perspective in the ups and downs. And so it's my prayer that today, everyone here, including me, would see these big three truths together. It's my prayer that these big truths would be exactly what you and I need to hear today, whatever our week gone has just been. It's my prayer that these truths would be something that we can actually take into the coming week, whatever comes our way in the next 7 days. So let's look at the passage, look at these three truths now. And before we do, just a quick pre-warning for you. At the end, I'm going to get you to talk to the person next to you and you'll answer the question, which of these truths did you most need to hear today? Okay, that's coming. Keep that in mind as we go through. Let's start with big truth number one, that Jesus is in control. Now, we've just jumped into John at chapter 18. And as Henry said, this is the first of 6 sermons we're doing between now and Easter. We're going to follow Jesus' journey to the cross, and we begin today with his arrest in the garden. And verse 1 says that he'd finished praying. That's actually the prayer we looked at last year, John 17, the prayer where he prays for himself, his disciples, for us. That's the prayer where he says he's about to be glorified. The hour has come. You see, Jesus is actually at this point, he's finished all his public ministry, he's done the healings, the teachings, the miracles, and now the hour has come for him to head to the cross. We read Jesus and his disciples, they cross the Kidron Valley, that's between the Temple Mount in Jerusalem and the Mount of Olives, and they enter a garden. Now there's one disciple missing, Judas. He must have slipped out during the prayer to get ready for the betrayal. But notice that Jesus has gone to a garden that Judas knows all about. It's a place they often went to together. You see, Jesus isn't going off to hide. Jesus isn't on the run. He's going somewhere known. He's going somewhere Judas could easily find him. Verse 3 then we read, along comes Judas guiding a detachment of soldiers, some officials from the chief priests and the Pharisees. They're carrying torches, lanterns, weapons. Now, there's a bit of debate as to what this word detachment refers to, but as a minimum, it would refer to 200 soldiers. Some think it would be more like 600, 1,000 soldiers, but at a minimum, 200. And even at 200, that's a pretty big group of people, isn't it? Especially there's also the religious officials there as well. And together they form this kind of lynch mob, haven't they? This unholy alliance of religion and politics. There's a massive mob getting together to arrest one carpenter and 11 of his mates. Now, given the torches, given the lanterns, they must think he's going to be hiding. Given the weapons, they must think he's going to resist in some way. But in verse 4, we read, Jesus, knowing all that was going to happen to him, went out and asked them, who is it you want? Jesus isn't cowering in a corner. He's not hiding behind a bush. No, he goes to them. He knows what's going to happen. He leads with the first question. And actually, as we go along, we'll see he's going to do all the interrogating. He's the one giving orders. You see, for our sakes, Jesus didn't run or hide from his betrayal. He embraced it. He waited for it. He walked towards it. And he asked the piercing question, who is it you want? Who are you seeking? Who are you after? And the question's not for his information. He knows the answer already. He's asking them to make them think. What do you really want? Why have you really come? Do you really want to arrest the Son of God? And so, what a striking picture. One man in front of a mob, at least 200 people. If you saw a photo of this, you think, well, the mob's in control. The mob's got the power here. They'd certainly think so. They feel strong. They feel powerful. The mob thinks they're the major player. But who's really calling the shots here? Who's really in control? It's Jesus, isn't it? The man all on his own. He's the major player in the story. The mob, they're just side actors. They're just the extras. It's all revolving around and controlled by him. He's the main character fulfilling the plans of God. And that is a truth that I definitely need to remember, and I suspect you do too, knowing that Jesus is the centre. Jesus is the driver of all history. Jesus calls the shots. That's a comfort, isn't it? That's a comfort when my own life feels like it's out of control, when it appears like evil is winning. We can remember Jesus in control when we are facing trouble. We can remember Jesus in control when we are betrayed perhaps by other people close to us. We can remember he's in control when we feel unfairly attacked or when we face what looks like unbeatable opposition. Jesus is in control no matter what mob or leader is wielding their power. He's the one with all authority on heaven and on earth given to him. As we move on in the story, we can see this isn't just because he happens to be a strong and powerful human. It's because of the second big truth that Jesus is God. Jesus just asked them, "Who is it you want?" And they reply in verse 5 that they want Jesus of Nazareth. They don't ask for Jesus the Messiah. They don't ask for Jesus the King. They don't even ask for Jesus the prophet. No, they ask for Jesus of Nazareth. And this is actually mocking him. It's actually scornful. They're saying, "You're from that despised area in the north. You're from that place where nothing good could possibly come from. You're from the wrong side of the tracks. You're from the wrong class. You've got the wrong accent. You're just Jesus of Nazareth." It's a bit like us saying, "You're Jesus of Burnie," or something like that. Sorry if you're visiting from Burnie. I should pick on another town at other points. But you can see, can't you? They have already made up their mind about Jesus. They've actually created a straw man that's easy to knock over. This guy is not who he claims to be, they think. This guy is just trouble that needs getting rid of. Many people today have actually got those sort of preconceived views of Jesus, don't they? They've made up their mind about Jesus before they've actually approached him properly. He's just a myth, or he's a good teacher, or a good example at best to them. He's just Jesus of Nazareth. But look at Jesus' response to this. He says to them, "I am he." Now that's confirming, yep, you're right, I am Jesus of Nazareth. But the literal phrase he uses is just, "I am." The NIV translates it to "I am he," but to kind of make it flow better. But his answer is just, "I am." And many of you would know that is a loaded phrase. I am is the divine name. Jesus is saying I am means he's using God's signature. You see, I am harks back to an incident that happened in Exodus 3. It's Moses seeing God in the burning bush, and God says to Moses, "I am who I am. This is what you are to say to the Israelites. I am has sent me to you." I am, that's the name that the Jews give for God. It's Yahweh. It's where Jehovah comes from. And so Jesus is saying to this mob, that is me. I'm the great I am. I'm Yahweh. I am God. Got no beginning or ending. I'm not dependent on anyone or anything. And it also links to the other I ams that Jesus said throughout his ministry. We looked at them as a series last year, didn't we? He said, "I am the light of the world. I am the bread of life. I am the good shepherd, the way, the truth, and the life. I am the vine. I am the resurrection and the life." You see, the mob thinks they're just after Jesus of Nazareth. The mob thinks he's nothing. But actually in front of them is someone so much more greater than just Jesus of Nazareth. They're in the presence of God right now. The great I am. Look what happens when Jesus says to them, verse 6. When Jesus said, "I am he, I am," they drew back and fell to the ground. At least 200 people fall in a heap. These soldiers, remember, this is the army that was one of the best armies in all of history, most trained army. They all collapse. They lose their footing. Losing your footing, that's not a good war tactic. Losing your footing means death during battle. But here they are, falling over like fainting goats at the sound of Jesus saying, "I am." when Jesus speaks, evil falls. All their numbers, all their weapons mean nothing. Nothing can match the Son of God. It actually should remind us of those similar falling over moments that we only just looked at. Remember Isaiah, Ezekiel in our Visions of God series? They fell over at the sight of God. Because what else can you do when faced with God? No one can actually stand on their feet in the presence of God. Just a kind of glimpse of who Jesus really is, just him saying the words, I am, it knocks over a whole Roman detachment. And again, the knowledge of this truth, I think, is so important for us to hold on to today. And there's actually kind of two truths going on, really, at least here. The mob, they're trying to emphasise Jesus' humanity. He's just Jesus of Nazareth. That's actually a good thing. The fact that Jesus is a human, that's great because it comforts us. As a human, he knows us. He can relate to us. He knows our struggles, our temptations. As a human, he can also represent us. But Jesus also emphatically reminds them that he is also fully God. He's the great I am. And that gives us comfort because we know he can deal with sin and evil. He's got the power to do so. Evil can't stand before him. He's in control of the situation, not the mob. And remarkably, Jesus, he's got all this power, but he uses this power in a way that benefits us. He's not just in control of the situation for his advantage, and that's the third big truth we want to see this morning. We've seen Jesus in control, Jesus is God. Finally, Jesus saves you. Now, while the mob are kind of dusting themselves off, while they're getting back to their feet, Jesus asks them again, who is it you want? They stubbornly go with the same reply, we want Jesus of Nazareth. And then in verse 8, Jesus answers, I told you that I am he. If you're looking for me, then let these men go. By these men, he means his disciples. And if you think about it, at this moment, they're in grave danger as well. They would have gone down too. The mob has come to get the dangerous insurrectionist and his followers. And so, even in this kind of extreme moment, Jesus is concerned for his disciples' welfare. It's me you want, not them. You're seeking me. Take me, not them. It's a me for them substitution, isn't it? John, as a kind of footnote, points out verse 9, this happened so that the words he had spoken would be fulfilled. I have not lost one of those you gave me. That's a very quick fulfillment. He only said that back in John 6. It's kind of pretty remarkable. Jesus' own words are these prophetic utterances that find fulfillment in his own actions. But it shows Jesus is about keeping his followers safe. Jesus will let his life be taken instead of theirs. Now, at this point, you might be thinking, well, that's nice for them, but what about us? But in what follows, we see actually the scope is so much wider than these first disciples. He's talking about saving more than just 11 blokes. In verse 10, we get to the fairly well-known moment where Simon Peter swings his sword and he takes off the servant's right ear. And he's doing that because Peter just doesn't get it. He doesn't realise that Jesus is in control of the situation, that Jesus is fulfilling his plan, his mission. And you get also the sense that Peter's not a great swordsman either. I'm no swordsman, but I don't think you normally go for the ears. He should be probably going for the soldiers as well, not the servants. You get the sense that Peter is flailing. We read in Luke's account that Jesus heals this man's ear. That's good. But more importantly, verse 11 we read, Jesus commanded Peter, put your sword away. Shall I not drink the cup the Father has given me? Peter, you do not know what's going on here. My plans, my purposes are being fulfilled right now, Jesus says. Peter, of all people, should have known this moment was coming. He's been with Jesus about 3.5 years at this point. Multiple times Jesus said that he'd be betrayed. He'd literally said, I'm going to be delivered into the hands of men. But yet, Peter tries to stop it happening. Peter's kind of got this zeal without knowledge. Zeal that goes against Jesus' mission and plan. And there's a bit of a warning here, isn't there, to not do the same, to not fight the wrong battles, to make sure we're actually aligned with his purposes, to carefully think through what does the gospel actually get us to stand for, and just as Jesus isn't fighting the sword, i.e. aggression, nor should we. Right now, Jesus, he's revealing his big mission, his purpose. What does he say? Shall I not drink the cup the Father has given me? What does he mean by that? Well, all through the Old Testament, the cup stood for God's wrath. It's his righteous anger against evil. The cup is what tyrants and oppressors are going to have to drink, the evildoers. The cup equals suffering, punishment, justice. The cup equals judgment day. And so for Jesus to drink the cup means he will take that wrath. On the cross, he'll have the punishment that you and I deserve placed on him. He takes judgment day early onto himself. Jesus saves us. Jesus is betrayed so we might be eternally accepted. He drinks the cup that was meant for us. And even though this is, somewhat of a rebuke for Peter, I think it's also a bit of an encouragement for him and for us. Because Jesus doesn't say to the soldiers, you know how I'd said, let these men go. Actually, can you take this guy away? Can you take away this muppet who should know better? I'm not sure I want to save him anymore. Jesus doesn't say that because it's this exact sort of stupidity that Jesus came to forgive. Jesus came to forgive Peter. He's come to save Peter. He's come to save you and I, even with our equally foolish actions. Not accents. We might have foolish accents as well. Now, after the brief skirmish, the passage concludes then, verse 12. The detachment of soldiers with its commander and the Jewish officials arrested Jesus. It says they bound him. That seems unnecessary. He's going willingly. He's in control, not them. But nonetheless, he's bound. He's brought first to Annas, who was the father-in-law of Caiaphas, the high priest that year. John gives a little bit of extra information that Caiaphas was the one who advised the Jewish leaders that it would be good if one man died for the people. He's been brought to trial to a bunch of people that already think he should die. There's no sort of semblance of a fair trial on offer, and we'll look at that trial in a few weeks. But could you see the prophetic irony in what and the kind of point that John is making? Caiaphas' exact words to the religious leaders back in John 11 were this. He said, it would be better for you that one man die for the people than the whole nation perish. That's exactly what Jesus will go on to do. He's the one who dies for all. The substitute who says, no, take me, not them. He's the one who drinks the cup on our behalf. He's the one who dies so that we might not perish. Can you see the repetition John wants us to see? Jesus saves us. Jesus saves you if you believe in him. Now this means a heap of things, but it means he loves you. He's actually given his life to save you. You can trust him, and it means you're not on trial anymore. You don't have to fear judgment day. You don't have to fear the many judgments that you get from other people along the way. Now, you might not presently fear judgment day. You might think, I've been a pretty good person. But a pastor called Tim Keller gave a great illustration that I think will make you think otherwise. Certainly made me think otherwise. He said to imagine, just for a moment, that there was someone invisible who followed me around. We'll pick on me now, not you, but imagine he's following me around, this invisible person. And every time I told someone else how to live, that person would write it down. Every time I told someone else how to live. What they're doing is compiling my standards for human behaviour, not God's standards, not the Ten Commandments, not even Jesus' standards, just Keith's standards. And if on Judgment Day then, suddenly that person appeared and I say, oh wow, who are you? Well, I've been following you around. Okay, awkward. But I want to give you, they say, the most unbelievably fair judgment day anyone could possibly have. Not going to judge you by God's standards. Not going to judge you by Jesus' standards. I'm just going to judge you based on your own standards. I would not be able to keep my footing, I can tell you that for free. I would not be able to stand on that judgment day, and I dare say you wouldn't be able to either. That's just our own standards we're going off. And if the soldiers, if they're knocked off their feet by just the kind of veiled appearance of God in Jesus, if they're knocked off their feet by him just uttering the words, I am, how are any of us going to stand on Judgment Day, the actual Judgment Day? Unless Jesus saves us, which he repeatedly promises to do in the Gospels, and we can see that that's a truth in this particular part of the Gospel. That's a truth you and I need to hear, that you can stand on Judgment Day because Jesus saves you. Praise God for that. Now let's land the plane though. Let's finish by doing what I warned you at the start of the sermon. We've just covered three big truths. Jesus is in control. Jesus is God. Jesus saves you. Let's take a few minutes now to discuss with the person next to you, which of these three truths did you most need to hear today? Perhaps you need to hear all of them, but which one was most helpful? Talk about that, and a follow-up question would be, how can you take the truth into this week? What truth did you most need to hear? How can you take it into the week? And you might need to move seats to pair up with people. And after a while, I'll come up and pray. Let's chat about it. Well, hopefully it's been a good chat. Keep the chat going after church as well. And I hope those truths were a balm for your soul like they were for me this week. How about I pray? Dear God, thank you for this story of Jesus arrested. Thank you for the big truths we see here. And I pray for each person sitting here that this is exactly what we need to hear, that these truths will shape the week ahead, and they'll be a comfort and an encouragement to us. Please spur us on to keep our eyes on Jesus this week. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.